Yeah, welcome again this afternoon. As proposed, we will now basically integrate your discussions into the presentation on some empirical insights we found. And yeah, we will maybe combine it with some use cases and deep dives depending on the time and the intensity of the discussion we will have. Yeah? And later on, it's then again of bringing it all together into the target picture discussion. So if I take off this structure, you know that already from the questionnaire. So it was about drivers and challenges, strategy and governance, products and services, and so on. There's more empirical insights in this study than what you have seen, as I have, or we have selected some of the questions from the survey. And if I start off with the drivers and challenges side, I mean, you will get all this material, so I won't read that out. Yeah, I will rather focus directly on the study results. And the first question was also the first question you had in the questionnaire, was about the challenges. What are the most important challenges for digital transformation towards Industry 4.0. And the results can be seen here on the left. Yeah. And you remember that in your questionnaire we asked that you should pick 4 of the most important challenges of this list. And the outcome of this study was basically that those 3, lack of knowledge, sense of urgency for digital Industry 4.0, and also complexity, excessive complexity, were considered as the key topics and the key challenges these 103 participants saw. As you can see also here, across the industries, this is pretty homogeneous, I would say. Yeah? You have the top rankings up here from 1 to 3 across the lack of knowledge on digital topics in Industry 4, which is ranked number 1. Here in the manufacturing sector, maybe number 3. There's the complexity topic, which was ranked number 1, and the sense of urgency. But you can see that's pretty homogeneous. There are a few topics, energy utilities, which had goal definition mentioned here. Control system, controlling topics were mentioned here by financial institutions, and here lacking financial resources stands out probably as a very high-ranking topic for the automotive industry, yeah, which was a bit surprising actually, because at least yeah, the big automotive groups I know, they have actually the money if they want to spend it. Yeah, so that's probably a very subjective topic. So for me, it would be interesting to hear what is your view from your discussions on the biggest challenges for digital transformation towards Industry 4? Is that, yeah, when you...
automotive sector, it seems the financial issue is solved, at least in Turkey.
Yeah.
Because it was not one of the 4, one of the items that we selected as the final 4.
Yeah.
It was again missing goals or difficult to define goals was the most prominent one.
Okay.
Then again, lack of know-how.
Yeah.
And missing control system has emerged among them.
Okay.
Excessive complexity was another subject. that were in the final
that
form.
a lot of discussion was
Yeah.
around this. Yeah. So goal definition.
And we sometimes see oversimplification or misunderstanding. We normally everybody, or especially in the upper management, talks about digital transformation, but somehow it boils down to understand, or I think it's because not managing that complexity very well, thinking about that complex issue as a simple issue like using iPads for meetings. So I sense there's a missing understanding complexity there.
Or holistic. There's no holistic concept, no real target.
It's combined with complexity and lack of knowledge, I suppose. Yeah.
Okay. So it's more in top management, more about tools, about different tech pieces.
Yeah, exactly. Rather than a holistic view. There's a holistic view, of course. Yeah. I can't blame that, but sometimes issues like this emerge as an indication of not fully comprehend the underlying subject. And
is this true? Can you also, let's say, from your experience, I think you are from Ford.
Ford, yeah.
So this is a pretty global, big player, and even in this company, they don't see that in a holistic way. Yeah, that's.
I can't say that they can't. They don't see. We have a holistic approach. We have a plan to. We are following a plan right now. However, sometimes I'm saying that understanding the digital transformation can be sometimes difficult, and it can sometimes boil down to simple things rather than the holistic views. It's not a major, I think, issue, but understanding fully and directing in that way can be sometimes difficult.
Yeah. And what about other groups? Anybody, any other group has to add to this? Please go first. Yeah.
As manufacturing group, actually the first choice, we were 5 companies, by the way. Missing goals. I mean, goal definition is the 5 of us. I mean, the common answer is actually the second or third. We can say maybe goal definition is because of lack of knowledge and also complexity. We thought that it can be. So we can say 3. I mean, answer.
Okay. And then the gentleman maybe first in the back, and then
Okay. So our group representing actually energy, business-to-business textile, and pharma, life science and pharma. So from our point of view, again, there were a couple of items which are common for all areas. So mainly it's complexity, I would say, which is coming from 2 things. First one for energy sector is a complexity of overall market, how to make sure that we are moving to that area. From pharma point of view is the lack of standardization from our side, where you need to have a different approach for the digitalization based on the equipment you have.
I'm not sure whether I understood that one. Lack of centralization, you said?
Lack of standardization.
Standardization.
Right.
Okay. Yeah.
Another point for us, I mean, what we see is a missing control system, so governance system. So establish it, set up or organizations to drive this approach, digital transformation approach. So organizations are doing something, but it's more like on trying and on initiative, specific initiative basis, but we don't have centralized kind of organization to move it, to move here. And the third one, and the first one is the lack of know-how, how to implement the digital transformation.
So actually the process, but not so much the technology side. Not so much which technology to select or which vendor to select, but rather how to actually make it happen in the organization.
Which is valid specifically for our organization, like pharma, life science. However, for energy, it was a little bit different approach. As I understood, also technology-wise, it is also a question how to cover quite a wide distribution of customers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And then I think you were in front.
From our group, and first of all, in our group, we were two companies from automotive suppliers. We are battery supplier mainly and wheel supplier. Also, we had Bosch in the team, which is representing a huge variety of products. And also from Yaşar Holding, IT systems, IT department, we had one participant, which they are producing different kind of products. So we don't have a specific, we didn't have a exact specific sector. So we mainly focused on the battery business, as let's say our leader chose. Based on the battery business mainly, and we tried to gather our ideas. The first important problem is the excessive complexity of the topic. That's the first one. Second one is, in our side, lack of financial resources for investments in digital measures. Mainly our sector is having problem in terms of profitability with single digit profits less than 5. So it's not easy to manage all kind of investments, especially in the automation side. So that's one important issue. And one other important one is missing goals or difficult to define goals related to digital transformation. We also have some not major but small issues about legal requirements, especially related with our sector. We had to apply some rules. I mean, we have to be in line with some legal rules. That's affecting sometimes our investments or different kind of approaches, but that has a less effect. Those are the main 3 pillars.
Thank you very much. Another group who wants to say something? Yeah.
And as a white goods production companies, I mean, we know that, I mean, the lack of know-how implementation, I mean, for the digital transformation, we are seeing the most common challenges in that area, and excessive complexity in our area, in production facilities. So we have so many different products, so many software, so many different applications that we have in different areas. So this complexity is very huge for us. And the mission critical control systems also as a governance system. So we need to build that kind of governance first and strategy, and then we have to manage somehow this complexity in this area. So, and to be able to manage this complexity, we are thinking about also the talent acquisition is very critical for us, it's challenging for us. These are the main areas for white goods also.
Very nice. I think this was about it for the first question. I move on. Then you had also a second question, which was on the changes in the competitive landscape. So here you can see that the overall results from our survey ranked existing customer with new needs or behaviors as number 1. So this basically comes down to the fact that, for example, I mean, my everyday life experienced a huge change. I, for example, switched completely from buying books as hardcover to softcover, everything on the iPad more or less. Yeah, it's very rare that I buy a physical book or things. So second is new competitors, new ecosystems emerging, and also existing competitors that come here to the place. But the really big ones are existing customers, and the customers actually driving them. And this is also across the industries here, very dominant topic, with the consumer and life science sector basically being outstanding, standing out here. Yeah, what about anybody wants to raise? We don't have to do it all, but when you just want to start.
So new competitors.
Yeah, I bring it.
For automotive industry. New competitors such as Tesla and.
We can't hear, or can we hear? Is it on?
It seems, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you hear? Hello? Yeah.
It's working, I guess.
It's
Okay.
working, yeah? Okay. Yeah.
New competitors such as Tesla and new business models like Uber or car sharing platforms seems to impact our business or have impacted our business in the last 3 years. And also existing customers who change behaviors with the Generation Y, online retailing, etc. New behavior. Or does people, the young generation, do not want to own cars nowadays?
Yeah.
So
even here in Turkey, yeah.
In Turkey, I can't say, but this is, I think it's more prominent in Europe and US. We are hearing instances in Turkey as well. So these are the three things that are challenging us have challenged us in the last 3 years. Or
anybody else who wants to add to this? I mean, we don't have to do it, let's say, extensively.
Our most common answer is new customer groups and markets. It seems that it's a little bit strange, but we have many business development guys. Maybe that's because. So.
Is that, and your discussion, maybe you can reflect a bit on that. Is that, I mean, we've seen that in the last hour or so, you had, after the first 30 minutes of this session, you really had intense discussions. So was it difficult to come to a conclusion there, or was that more common sense when you look at the whole?
Actually, it was most common.
Yeah, okay.
There's no deep discussion on that.
On this one, okay, yeah. Anybody else wants to add to this point, or do you agree in general? Do you see any completely different results from your discussions? This is not the case, so I would switch on to the next. The biggest challenges in digitization here from the survey, the result was the distribution channels and customer interface, to change and digitize existing products and services. Whereas, for example, the new business segments and also production and logistics here are relatively low in the ranking, and this is a bit surprising, or was surprising to us, because we think that the companies are underestimating the potential to generate new business segments and also drive also cost and efficiency improvements in production and logistics. This was really surprising for us as a result in this survey. So does any group have comments on that? Did you rank, for example, the potential of those aspects higher in your discussion, or was your discussion also, or the results also, very much centered around the customer interface? This would be interesting. Anybody wants to, has an idea here from what was the...
Actually, pretty similar.
Pretty similar?
Pretty similar, but change of internal process for Turkey, especially Turkish companies, or Turkish automotive companies. We had Borusan and Ford Otosan. We are both national sales companies or distributors in one sense. We are common in that sense. As for Otosan, we are producing as well. But it seems that the most prominent change or most significant change will be in internal processes for cost saving.
Okay.
Also, we noticed both that new business development or incubation, like innovation, trying with new business models, we are both doing that with separate entities or kind of separate entities. These were the two things interesting, or the rest is pretty much similar.
Okay. So for the others, they would agree to this?
No,
Just
Yeah.
a small addition to that, and especially in the new business segments, very similar with your Caterpillar example, which you gave in the morning session. The same is related with us, so we all agreed that we will be more and more selling services or complete tailor-made solutions instead of selling products. So that will be the expectation for the future.
Yeah. It's interesting. So I think we can move to the next, which was also the major, pretty similar actually here. The opportunities along this journey, the highest ranking were acquisition of new customers, differentiation from competition, and also new sources of revenue. Goes pretty in line with what we've seen in the previous slide. So I think we don't have to deep dive here if you don't want to discuss that. Or do you want to add?
Everybody of you have the same picture here? I heavily doubt this. I heavily doubt this.
We had different.
It's okay, but anybody a completely different view? Sorry.
We are close to that.
You're close to it, or?
We choose new resources of revenue in the first rank, and the acquisition of new customers is the second rank actually.
Okay.
We believe that this transformation and new products, new kind of services will bring us some new customers, new areas for us. So we choose first one as new customers and acquisitions of new customers actually.
Anyone on this side here, more or on this side?
Yeah, so we had it in the team. We had different approaches as coming from different companies and industries. However, as a total, as a group, we came to cost saving and increase of agility and flexibility here as a first of all and first low-hanging fruit opportunity to come on the table actually.
So you are highlighting basically again, which is maybe right, that the previous slide didn't show it so extremely, that the cost savings were not ranked as high in this survey, but still from a practical point of view, as I put it here, this is certainly one of the key areas we see also in digital.
I can tell you from my own experience. In telecom, this was like 10, 15 years ago, everybody invested in, very early in the internet. That was one of the sectors or industries who built their own internet portals, right? I don't know whether you recall that was from Vodafone, they had portals from Deutsche Telekom, from Telefonica, this walled internet, of course. What they were thinking about, that these three things here, new customers, new revenues, new services, that's what it's all about. If you now look at it 10 years later, right, they started to realize that the major benefit they can get from digital transformation is in agility, flexibility, and maybe a little bit in the cost saving side. So everything moved completely from I want to go to new business fields because simply I don't have the capability. Think about this. You are operating in new markets with non-existing capabilities. Almost nobody has really good digital capabilities if you're not a digital company. So the strategies really change dramatically. In any industry, if you are in any industry which is more a laggard, so even a little bit later in the development maturity service circle than telecoms, I can only say from my personal experience what I think is the highest leverage you can get is in these two areas. So about digitizing your operations, not necessarily going for new digital business models. That's much more difficult, right? This is much more difficult. You need capabilities, competencies, which are not there, which you have to build up, right, from the scratch. I don't say you should not go into this field, but if we talk about lower hanging fruits, it's still not easy to do it. From a strategic perspective, you need to be crystal clear which route you are going. And in the public discussion, everything is mixed up, right? If you talk about digital, some talk about internal processes, others talk about Uber, Airbnb. You need to be super crystal clear where you focus your energy and resources on, right? Especially if resources, money, and human resource-wise is scarce. And this is the case in digital.
And I fully agree. I would add here that increase of agility and flexibility is certainly about the cultural and mindset approaches rather than the tech side of digital transformation. That's basically more looking at the big OTT internet players and at the startup scenes in the digital space and adopting working methodologies to the corporate world here. Yeah, so I fully agree. Yeah, anything else that stands out here? That's pretty clear, or some things are for me pretty clear. I mean, if I look at travel and transport, that they face customer loyalty very high. Yeah. If we look at manufacturing, they rank differentiation from competition very high. Also flexibility quite high here. Yeah. So, yeah, I think an interesting point. If we now dive deeper into the strategy field, I don't want to spend too much time here. You will have that with the material. How is that structured? Basically, what you can take away from here is that most digital initiatives in the companies we surveyed, about more than 50%, 50 to 60% are driven actually from the top management, from the C-levels, and also the implementation responsibility is mostly on C-level field. I would rather come to the question you had in the self-assessment, and this was which measures are applied to catalyze digital transformation. So the ones that are standing out here, the top three are training, hiring digital talent, strategic alliances with digital companies, not so much with setting up own corporate incubators, accelerators, or acqui-hiring, so acquiring small companies to get the talent, or venture capital is also not a top priority, and this is actually pretty consistent across the industries, as you can see. So in terms of the measures for digital transformation, anything that, let's say, would stand out here that is surprising for you? Does anyone want to comment on that, or that's fine with you? No? Same? From the automotive?
As for example, for this acquiring digital companies, recently, for example, for autonomous driving technologies, for this globally has purchased a new startup specialized in that area. And that's actually, and also as for Totosan, we also investing in, as I said before, in small or trying to establish a sort of incubator within for Totosan to make live the ideas generated within the company, such as new business models, digital ventures and those kind of companies.
Is that driven from the local Turkish?
Yes, Turkish.
Okay.
And as I've heard, Borusan Holding is also taking the similar approach, making ideas into live by investing in or spinning off such companies from them.
Okay. That's surprising, actually, that in such a global giant like Ford, you can do that on the...
As for Tutosan, we are arm's length position, so we are half Koç and half Ford Motor Company. Therefore, we are independent in that sense. We are a separate company. And these ideas that I mentioned is like reservists, which we call reservists. It's actually a shuttle bus for going to work and back. So we use services in Turkey, bus services, the coach services, let's say. Every company, big companies, use those services to transport workers home and back. But small companies don't have such services. So we have a startup which is going to address that issue by organizing people via mobile apps to join a join a bus ring for their work area, etc.
How long did it take? I mean, I was myself in the same situation, had some other colleagues on chief level, where we tried to build a certain service for booking taxis. What you now find, this is like usual everywhere. I had a big front from the IT guys, and someone from the business sales side would be responsible for it. We said, no, we do it ourselves. It took me half a year to knock a nail on them. I said, most probably, if we do it with our IT, with our speed, it will take years, right?
Yeah.
After half a year, I somehow succeeded. We invested in a company outside. They brought up the business, and in half a year would never been able to do this. But it was psychologically, and from doing a mind shift, was a very, very, I would say, effort-intensive journey. What is your experience? Did this get through easily, or did you discuss with your board a year to do this, or how was it?
Actually, the first part, making the application, was relatively easy, and the guys who had the idea worked separately. They are taken off from the organization, and they worked separately and made trials, etc. Worked like this startup, and we faced with the application and the model, let's say. But making it to perfectly live by creating a separate entity, company, it took a little while because the board had to approve, and it has recently approved. We got the approval in the end. Sometimes bureaucracy can take a little longer than the actual work, let's say. That's the experience. And Ford actually, Ford is also generating a similar concept that we are in Turkey used to. We call it dolmuş here in Turkey, but Ford is also investing in a company or creating their own service called Chariot in London, and it's pretty much same as the dolmuşes in Turkey. And it's an interesting story. I don't know the exact story, but there is now a Chariot service Ford is providing, similar to dolmuş in London.
Oh, that's cool. Okay. You wanted to add? Or? Okay.
Maybe, but he wanted to add, first, maybe? The gentleman here. Sorry, I was sleeping here. Almost. Should have two mics.
Well, first of all, our group also took the first, and no surprises here, took, let's say, traditional approach to move forward. But I think it's also mainly driven by the profile of the team as we are. So actually I had a question which you partially answered, but is there any benchmark in terms of, if possible at all, what is the fastest and most effective way to move out of these 6? Again, there cannot be one simple answer, but what is your experience on that?
I can easily answer this. By the way, what you see here is what I called digitize your business. This is you transform your own company. If you move to new fields where you don't have the capabilities and deal with new competitors, new customers, these approaches, as you said, you are bought into a company which has a specific technology, which you are not very used to, then you use these things. What is possibly reflected here is that people, how they think about digital transformation. If they think digitizing their own organization is more important, then you have to go this way. It's not good or bad, it's just a strategic decision. If you say, I'm standing in the corner already, right? I have to move to completely new business fields, then I'm more in this venture acceleration or VC stuff of business. My personal experience is that's why I asked you to move into this field. Nowadays it's okay. I did this in 2012, right? This is in Middle East. In the Middle East, investment was only done in oil, upstream, downstream oil, blue chip companies. Huh? At that point, to introduce a concept like venture capital was almost impossible, right? It took me, next to this one investment, we opened a venture fund. This was I think 9-month exercise with 3 board presentations, right? And what we invested there was the same amount as I had yearly as my marketing budget. I was chief marketing officer. It was the same amount, right? So they easily spend a couple of tens of millions US dollars in marketing, right? Then to invest 10 or 15 million in this space. I think this has changed now. I cannot tell you how it exactly with Turkey. It depends obviously also on how your company works. But once you get this through, it can have immediate impact because these startups, they are running, they are doing things much faster. Whereas here you do a digital transformation. A digital transformation is a 5 to 10 years exercise, right? Anybody who tells you something different is simply lying, right? He has either never done this or has no clue. This is really, you work with your existing people, you have to upskill them, and this is what is said, training and further education. And you need to somehow change the distribution of your workforce. So some new talents will come in there. You know how long this takes, right? So this is a much, much, much longer journey. But the earlier you start, the better you are positioned.
I think.
This is out of battery business. In our case, in my case, we are applying the first 3 all in together, in fact. The first strategy is to have a partner, alliance company, to create this cultural way, in fact, inside the company. And while you are thinking about the global companies, I think it's better to have to train your specifically each plant size people. It's better to start with a strategical partner. Then we are trying to.
What you're doing exactly with a strategic partner? I would be very interested.
In fact, we have a partnership. We are starting a partnership with a company to support us our digital transformation activities.
Okay.
And during this time, we are going to start to train our.
But is that more a consulting firm or
both? It will include consulting plus some service agreements.
Okay.
Also. Okay. So during this time, we are going to train our own staff, and of course hiring new digital talents to empower our staff. And this can be applied all over the global scale, in fact, for the company.
That's good. Not so many people are in this field with the strategic lines. There's a lot of talk, right? Exactly. But if you see what happens really on the ground, in terms of, okay, you can sign an MOU, nice things for the press, right? But if you really see what's happened on the ground, it's difficult. I myself did run an innovation center, and we signed a couple of innovation partnerships. We were super enthusiastic in the beginning, right? So we had partners, like 5, 6, 7 partners around the globe, from Asia, from Europe, from US. If I'm very honest, after 2 years, when we looked at it, what came out of this partnership approach was not this much, right?
It's
it was not
kind
this
of
much. So that's why I'm interested in whom you are partnering with. It's really a central question. I would say we didn't do everything in a perfect way, although those were big names we were partnering with.
In fact, it's a kind of Japanese style know-how creation, like copy and co-create later on.
Yeah, but I can also fully support that from my Matchmaker Ventures experience, that especially in the B2B field, partnering is very time-consuming, and the effect is rarely seen, or it has to be a clear case, basically. It has to be a very clear case, and that's why, for example, in the consumer business, it's much easier, because sometimes there are it's very clear which product feature so you would add, or which new offering you can make, which service you can offer. Yeah, that's in the consumer business much easier than in the B2B space. Good. Can we move on? I think I quickly go. You can look at this. I think in the text you will have all this. Yeah, you can also take a picture, but you will get it also immediately. This is a Coca-Cola example, how they actually go about the early stage co-creation, and how they actually then go to switch to the later stage partnering approach. Yeah. But I think it's very well described on the pages. I think we should rather focus on the, there were some outcomes here for Coca-Cola with this approach. Yeah, and we selected it as one certainly good practice example here. You can read it with the things. Also, the Springer example is very well described. That's, I mean, I talked to the CEO, Michael Döpfner, several times, and this was really amazing. Maybe I stay here, because this was a really mindset, a cultural transformation he managed in the traditional newspaper business. So Springer is newspapers, yeah, biggest newspaper in Germany, tabloid, Bild, for example, and some other newspapers are there. And the mindset shift he achieved is basically that he made it clear to his team that they are not in the business of putting ink on paper. Yeah? That they are in the business of providing information and providing entertainment. Yeah, this took him years. Yeah, it took him years to get it out of the head of the people that they think they have to sell a piece of paper with ink on it. Yeah, and this is his achievement, and that's why they do like 70% or I think now it's almost 80% of their revenues no, 60-70% in revenues, I think it's today, in digital, and 80% or 90% in profits. Yeah? So it's extreme, and that's why they are in business and others die. And he started it in 2009 or so.
And that's the true disruptive case, because it's a very traditional company, and all the print industry was disrupted all over Europe. These are the ones, and they are almost, I would not say the only ones, but one of the few ones who really turned their business upside down. This is the strongest case I know. Even if you go to, in Germany, if you hear consultants also talk about success stories, they always come back to this one. It's really dramatic. It's really dramatic. I mean, and is anybody in print here?
No.
Or in media industry? Media industry.
No,
still, if you look at most newspapers, right, they have their print edition, and these guys don't work with the online edition. They sit next doors, right? They are not able to merge or find synergies between business models. Here, they completely disrupted the business. I mean, they sold off parts of their print entities. They bought heavily into digital entities at a time where these digital entities were not profitable, right? So really foreseeing what was coming. That was a very, very bold move.
And in this case, if I because Michael Döpfner told me as well that the most critical thing was also in this case, not to set up a separate unit, a separate digital unit, but to have them leave them integrated, yeah, so that there was no competition, let's say old world and new world, yeah, the old world which would die and the new world which has all the benefits and the merit and the the success stories, yeah. So this was the way he made it work. This might not work in every case, but he kept it integrated. And he said, I want you to bring our information business and our entertainment business to the next level. You are not in the print, the ones in the print business and the other in the digital business. Yeah? That might not be the solution everywhere, but this was the key takeaway here. Okay. So Nike, I will skip that one. You go through that. Also this launch factory here, Rocket Internet. I think I'd rather skip that. Read through it, and also feel free to come back to me, to us, if you want to know more. If we dive deeper into the products and services section, there were also some, I would rather focus on the questions you got in the self-assessment. And the first one was about customer involvement in the product development. So did the companies we surveyed involve their customers to develop their products and services? And a strong involvement was, we almost didn't see that. Yeah? So most of them probably had an approach where they sometimes did a survey and so did just ordinary stuff. So what about, and yeah, you can see that really no involvement of customers, travel and transport, for example, very good. Yeah, okay, we don't have travel and transport here, but if you look at manufacturing, yeah. Here, if we look at automotive, they involve their customers. That's what they said, yeah. Stands probably out here. What about the audience and the groups here? What was your, maybe here in the, or do you want to answer here from, we can also start the other way around. We don't have to start. Yeah.
Our answer is occasional, similar to that. We thought that actually we got insights from customer in classic way. Some of us working in B2B model with dealers, we got feelings or some ideas from dealers. And some of us using some digital platforms. We have a dealer portal and some B2C applications, and also most of us using social media to get insight from the customer. So we thought that it should be the occasional at least.
Okay. Any comments from other groups?
Yeah, in our group there is we had no involvement at all and frequent involvement, but what we found out is it is very much industry dependent, as shown here as well. For example, so in pharma, I would hardly imagine finished product development in pharma. At least I was scared about the outcome of this development. However, in business-to-business textile, it's absolutely different, very much driven by the customer needs and working very close to the specific customer. So what we found out.
In Arçelik also it's occasional involvement, but we have a garage concept in Arçelik and we have an open innovation day. We gather with universities and suppliers from different vendors, different occasional areas. So we have an occasional involvement, but we are trying to get more information from the suppliers, customers, and the other areas from this different disciplines. So it's occasional, but it's good start for us, for example.
Okay, fine.
Hast du Beispiele hier?
For customer involvement, I don't think that I have. We'll see. Well, it's more, no, I don't have a case, I think, right now. Maybe you can can you think of one that you can just without a slide?
I'm thinking about what I learned recently only. I talked to a guy who's giving advice to people in B2B sales, right? So from business to business sales. So how can you involve your customer in B2B sales? He said, oh, that's quite easy. And he introduced somebody from Bosch here. I think he even introduced it with Bosch somewhere in Germany. Normally the way that people were writing their proposals was they gathered a team with if it's kind of complex technical solution, whatever it is. They gathered a team from the engineering department. They had people from sales department and other guys who were involved in writing this proposal. Normally, I mean, it's B2B sales. We talk about a significant amount of volume, we should say. Then they built a huge proposal, right? That took them 2 months or something. Then with this huge proposal, they went to the customer and then started the negotiation process. And either, sometimes it's black and white, say, no, I don't want it, far too high from price, or okay, I'll take it. But in most cases, it took very long, and the success ratio was also rather low. Then they started to change the process. They said, okay, we gather with the same team, 2 weeks, we develop a kind of concept how it could look like without detailed specification of the offer. And with this concept, they went to the customer. And together with the customer said, no, I want more to the right, more to the left. I don't want this much. I want less of this feature. In B2B sales, which normally seems to be close. And what they in the end achieved was to get it down from 2 to 3 months to 6 months and to 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, it was a customer-tailored proposal. And the customer was involved during the whole sales process. So you build loyalty. You lock them in. So less sales cost, a faster time to delivery, more customer-centric. I never thought about it, but when I heard it, I said, yes, this is the way how we can involve, even in sales, B2B sales, your customer. There's not necessarily a digital way of doing things, but I think profoundly efficient.
Then the critical thing, if I might add here, is actually the interaction in this process and not just asking a customer what they want, because then it comes down to the famous Ford statement. If I would have asked my clients or the people on the street in 1900 or so what they wanted in terms of mobility, they would have answered faster horses, but not. They wouldn't have come up with the automobile, as an idea. So you have to, that's your point, you have to confront your clients, your customers with an idea and test it, basically. That's the idea about agile product development.
If you think about this how startups work, I don't know if everybody has built up a startup. A startup works with a concept which is called MVP, Minimal Viable Product. It's the same logic here. You build a prototype, show the prototype, get early customer feedback. You build a kind of technology concept, same way we did build our company in Dubai after 3 months, right? And you confront the customer with it. The customer comes back very easily, said this works, that doesn't work, or you see from the usage statistics, from traffic statistics, what works and what does not work. But then the next step, it's not a waterfall IT project process, but in smaller time units, you develop features, and after, let's say, after 3, 4, 5 weeks, you move right or left based on a kind of customer feedback. This is very famous lean startup approaches, is how almost all startups are built. In the early phase, you take customer feedback. In the later phase, you see the economical impact. So how much revenue you are generating with it, how your profitability goes, or other of these indicators. But it's not this classical planning process which you have in a company where you plan end of 2017, you plan for end of 2018. End of 2018, you say, okay, what did we plan? Okay, did we reach it or didn't we reach it? Not possible in a digital, very dynamic world. So you change the way significantly how you operate. And this is, in the end, this is a recipe for success in digital. I mean, and the example I gave you with the B2B sales, it does not even need technology, right? It needs just thinking differently about the way how you approach customers. Yeah.
Good. On the products development side, we had the similar example, most of selling basically an outcome. One of the first ones was the engine turbine manufacturer Rolls-Royce, that's well known. We discussed that already several times in the Caterpillar example, for example. We discussed Tesla as well, that's why I will go ahead and turn to customer management. In customer management, again, you can read all the insights. There was a big discussion about when is a customer considered actually digital, yeah, and there are some statements here, yeah. They use self-service and paperless communication. They use digital hardware and media. They are tracked and treated online. They use the internet to consume content and so on. Yeah? The share of digital customers at the time was, for only 20% of the participants, they're above 50%, and it's projected to increase quite significantly. So especially the more or less negligible digital customer interaction is projected to decrease more or less fully. I think that's not very controversial here, unless somebody would object here. So I would move on to the question you actually had. And the question you had was the digitization more focused on the customer service interaction. Yeah? And that's the outcome here of the survey. The outcome here is basically that there is a steep rise of the digital customer interaction here across the timeline with a high customer interaction, digital customer, with a high customer interaction here. That's actually the lower part reflected here. In automotive, 20% something, 21 energy utilities, 19. So the question is there any contradiction to your experience, to the discussion in your group? Anybody wants to speak out? This is not the case, I think. Any comments from you, Carmichael?
Yeah, always comments.
What? You have always comments, yeah.
We don't have specific data or gathered in our hands.
Yeah.
But everybody, we somehow we answered this by inference. So anybody who wants to nowadays wants to buy a car would go at least once to the website and check the cars. So which options there are. And also, we talked about everyone who goes to a dealer is first checking the website before going to the dealer for buying a car. So in the car sales business, I think our understanding is that more than 50% of the interaction takes place, if we count each interaction, takes place in the online area. For services, however, we have still way to go. It's not around those portions, but for services, maintenance, etc., you are going first to the dealer and make interactions there.
Is it?
So it is.
Is it?
Yeah, it is right now. We have online reservations for service, etc., but that's it. And also we have online tracking of your car while it is in the service, in what status, etc. But still, that's also inference. We don't have exact numbers. Yeah. It is less than 50% or maybe 10 to 25% area for service business. But for sales business is higher than 50%.
I have two comments on this immediately. First, you said you don't have a KPI with which you measure this, which is typical for traditional firms. If you build up a startup, the first thing you do is, even before you launch anything, you build a suite of digital KPIs. So you know exactly how it goes. you know by month, you know by week, you know by day where it's going, and you adjust your activities. This brings agility, right? This is one thing. But what you do is normal, so no criticism. Second, I'm surprised about the service business because I booked an inspection 1 week ago in Berlin. So what I do, I go to the internet. I go to Google search and go for the top 3, 4, 5 companies. You end up with Pit Stop. I don't know whether you have something here. And there's ATU. This is a company which is available in Germany. Then you go to their website. It takes you 10 minutes to find the telephone number. But you can immediately press a button, book an online service here. If you find the telephone number, right, then you are in the waiting line queue for 5 or 7 minutes, right? And I had a complicated booking because I wanted to make an inspection. I had to do this TÜV, I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, that's state certification that you
registration, so complex. This is why I took the time to talk to the guys in the content. But I would expect that these guys have 80 or 90% of their booking online, and the web page is designed easily. So again, you don't find a telephone number, but to book whatever service you want is super easy, right? So I think this is where also the big car manufacturer will go over time. So what you experience already with sales, and I think this is brilliant, by the way, what car manufacturers are doing. If you can configure your car online, this was for me a real revolution when this was first available, like, I don't know, 10 years ago. I think in the service side, it will exactly go the same way.
Yeah, as I said, we have online reservation systems on the web, but it's not used thoroughly. Customers do not prefer that channel in the first place. But I believe, as you said, if we are planning to provide the backup services, like exactly managing the time of the shop floor with our systems, and then integrating that online reservation with that, at that time, we will be able to force the customer or change the customer behavior to online.
Exactly.
Yeah. Anything else? Anybody else who wants to? No? No? Okay. So I'll move on. Customer interaction here from the textile or fashion industry. An example which stood out here is Burberry, certainly, who had those VR mirrors, for example. They introduced that. Their staff is using the iPads to show to the customer different options. You can do the booking and so on and so forth. And this resulted really in impressive revenue growth, 4 times revenue increase from 2006 to 2014-15. 70% of retail store revenues generated by stores with digital commerce offers. Yeah. So that's really impressive. And another example, I had another case here. Yeah, we'll find that later maybe. Result first, you had the question share of sales through digital channels. Yeah, here we have a quite complex graphic with a y-axis on share of digital marketing expenses. You can have a deeper look at this when you have the material. But what it says here is that still the share of through digital sales channels is low, and also the marketing expenditure is low. This is changing a bit, or the picture is changing across the industries here. The question is, does that conflict or contradict to your findings? Is there an industry where you do already a lot of sales through digital channels here? Is that already somewhere in the region more than 25% in the Turkish industry? It's probably not the case, I suppose. Yeah, sales is still very low. So this question, you didn't have it. I won't go into detail here. More from the retail business, food retail stores, concept which I found pretty impressive was Walmart with dynamic pricing, for example. They change several times a day the pricing of their products, yeah, and capture therefore a higher profit. That's here in basically blue and light blue and dark blue. Basically, they adjust the price levels so that they can capture and optimize the profit. Yeah. And we will see that in the future with big data analytics moving forward. I can see clearly that we have a very individual pricing, and even if you click, for example, if you book a flight, for example, online today, yeah, and if you click from the same IP address several times on the offer, you will see the price go up. Yeah, even if nothing changed, they just want to drag you to take the offer. So always use two different computers if you check twice for a price for a hotel or something like that. Yeah, otherwise you pay more. Yeah. The profit increase of Walmart, for example, was plus 25%. Yeah. Walmart, Amazon, Best Buy, and Sears basically took this approach, yeah, in the retail business. Very interesting, I think.
Is there a research around how customers behave or think of such dynamic pricing?
They hate it. They hate it.
For airlines, it is obvious there is a limited capacity, and if you don't buy at that price, later on you buy for a higher price. But if I go in the morning to Walmart and buy something for 10 euros, and in the afternoon it is sold in 8 euros,
then you are really not happy about it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Is there a research around how customers behave? Because
I tell you, there is plenty of research about this, more than you think.
But customer response, I mean.
No, this is what these guys are doing. All their pricing is built on the big data input. So how you behave determines how the price looks like.
Yeah, but
on average, I mean, these price increases, how high the price increases go, this is like think about it, kind of basic artificial intelligence. How you reacted to. So how thousands or millions of customers reacted to a price increase. This goes into their algorithms, and so they have the data, right? They don't publish it, but
I mean, customer satisfaction might be affected by this.
You mean in terms of satisfaction?
Yeah, in terms of satisfaction, and people might tend to use other retailers because of this. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, we have an example here, which is Amazon, right? They are also, I mean, they are those superstars in big data. The question is not only how the price is relative to your last buy or when you last looked at the website. The question is, how is your price compared to competition, right? And if you are in a situation like these big guys, like Walmart and Amazon, who have the scale to always go for the lowest prices, right? They can work with this difference towards the next competitor. And in this difference, they can easily optimize. Maybe with certain things, they can only go above it. I know for Amazon, everybody thinks they are the cheapest. I know there is research which says, in 1/3 of all cases, Amazon is not the cheapest. But you go there because you think they are the cheapest, right? And they are adjusting prices very, very fast based on based on your reaction. I can only tell from my personal experience to close this up. I'm totally annoyed by the practice, not of Amazon, because I don't really. I don't feel. I would not know that this happened with airlines. I really feel very annoyed. So my way of dealing with it is, again, I have whatever 5-10 devices. So no, 5 devices. If I take the devices of my son and my wife, I have 10 devices. So we just book from different devices. It's stupid, but this is how it goes. But the problem is, this is industry standard, right? If everybody is doing it,
we get all ripped off.
My view is my view is in the long run, companies, for example, Amazon is putting customer satisfaction first. So if I believe those type of retailers or those types of companies will succeed better than the others, trying to manipulate the prices based on the circumstances.
I don't know. You can only do the Amazon model if you are a technology leader and if you are working as efficient, as frugal as Amazon is doing. Otherwise, you cannot play it. You can say, I'm customer obsessed. I put it. If you don't have the infrastructure, you don't have the team, you don't have the process, you don't have the technology. This is a nice saying, but you cannot achieve it. So
and it took them 20 years to get there.
And it took them 20 years, but they continuously innovate, simplify. This is one of the leadership principles at Amazon. Innovate, simplify. Another leadership principle is be frugal, right? So don't spend money for anything. And then whatever they won with this approach, right? They either gave it back to the customer, best price, or they reinvested it in other business units. But Amazon, for years, is not profitable, right? Still, the share price is going through the roof because they generate revenue. I think this is fundamental what this guy did, this approach, and to keep his shareholders happy, unbelievable what this guy has done. But now, he's in such an advantaged position that almost nobody, 50% of online sales in the US is Amazon. 50% of a totally fragmented market, right? 50%. So this is what they achieve with constantly adding according to this logic.
And he asks his leadership team, when they make when they make a profit, he tells them, you are not innovative because you don't spend in innovation projects. You collect money. We don't want profits. We want innovation.
I want growth.
I want growth. That's a completely different mindset. Yeah. Okay. So I think we have to speed up a little bit. This is also a nice dynamic pricing model from Quicksilver. They have a tracking of customers. So, for example, if I am in Berlin in a store, I looked at a certain I don't know, trousers or T-shirt or whatever, and then I go on a holiday, come to Turkey, and walk along the beach. I would get, when I'm connected through social media, I would get a message that down the road, 200 meters there, is a special offer for the T-shirt I looked at in Berlin. Yeah, and that's pretty impressive. Yeah, that's pretty impressive actually. So. I will skip that one and come to the operations and supply chain part, because that's also a very important topic here in our Industry 4.0 focus topic. And the first question you had was about the target picture and transformation roadmap. So does that exist? How well is that defined? Yeah. And the second question was on how well are the technologies and digital methods basically leveraged. Yeah. And what we can see here is that the companies in this survey, a fairly large amount of a quarter were in continuous incremental optimization. Half of it work on a digital agenda and roadmap. Then let's say only 5% really claimed that they have a comprehensive target picture and roadmap towards the future. Yeah. So maybe if we look at this part, I heard some discussions which more or less correspond to this picture, but how would you say it? Do you have to add to these results? Are they surprising for you? No, that's fine. That's more or less corresponds with your view.
Anybody in here? Okay. 10 years?
5 years.
Okay.
So the cycles become a bit shorter, yeah, because
Not like this 2 years, let's say. It's not like
nah.
By the way, that's a new planning horizon, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even in asset-heavy industries where you have business plans which only materialize after 10 years, no way to plan 10 years ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
In our case also,
Yeah.
we can estimate the next coming 5 years
Yeah.
Yeah.
industry impacts and
Also,
targets.
with regards to okay, there's industry trend. I think in the questionnaire there was also technology trends.
That's
Or is it the other one?
this here.
Would you say you would be able to forecast which technology is relevant for the next 5 years? What about you?
We have some targets, some, how can I say?
You have an idea, yeah.
Ideas,
Yeah, sure.
but we are expecting to have them within
Yeah.
5 years.
Okay.
Not yet.
I mean, it's also.
Let's go through all of them. What on your side?
Also, we have similar processes in our case also. I mean, we have a digital agenda and we have a clear roadmap on that for 5 years, but we are not sure about that. Will it take 5 years or will change it within 3 years or something like that? I mean, we have a roadmap on that, both products and services also.
Yeah.
But it's very high level approach at the moment. So I mean, it will continue and it will definitely will be sharpened within 3 years also. But we were having these kind of roadmaps in each year. So when we think about that, I mean, both IT, both business processes. Also, when we think about that, 3 years we have the clear roadmaps, but for the 5 and 10 years, it's very ambiguous. Let's say.
I would be so challenging to say it's a waste of time to develop something for 5 or 10 years ahead. But the problem here is not, even if you have a vision for the next 3 years, the question, how do you deal with change? I mean, you most probably will not follow algorithmically a 3-year plan. How fast can you react if something changes? New products, new competitors?
I mean, in Arçelik also, in Arçelik case also, I mean, for the product development, we are very agile, but the business processes, the change, the transformation will affect all things. I mean, the most struggling point will be the business process within the Arçelik. So it's a bit difficult to change all business decision making. So there are so many decision making points. So, but the products are changing rapidly. So we know what should be changed about the products, and we are trying to get customer insights to Arçelik also in many different ways. In Europe, for example, we have mostly electronic sales. I mean, more than 50%. But in Turkey, it's retail marketing. It's increasing, not the electronic way. It's retail. It's still exists in the field. So, but we are planning to have some plans on. For example, we are in a huge Omni project in Turkey, and we are trying to be ready for these kind of impacts in the different markets also.
One more question. Now, assume you do a financial planning. Normally, you do it at least for 1 year, right? Your CFO says the budget is allocated to X, Y. How fast can you move from budget position A to budget position B without the CFO stepping in?
It's
I mean, I tell of my own experience. That's why I'm asking the question. This is where, if you talk about internal processes, this is when it's very sounds very simplistic, but this is where the problems lie in the end. If you really want to be agile, I mean, if you are agile in a specific unit, this is very good, right? But to be a digital leader, right, it needs to go across the whole value chain, across on a cross-functional basis with all entities involved, and this includes, although he does not like to hear it, the CFO as well, right? And these guys. Do you think you can easily move budgets from, forget about product A, I go to product C, which was not on my financial agenda?
No, I can easily say that for the budget means, I mean, we are working very based on silos still. I mean, we are not very agile on budget usage.
Exactly, and that's...
it's not a pity. I mean, this is... typical. I get the same answer every time, so nothing to be it's a little bit to be concerned about, but I mean, you are, sorry? But sometimes the CFO is the bad guy in the equation.
It's not
so any
sometimes.
CFO here? Anyone from finance
no
here?
CFO. We can blame him.
Yeah.
We can or her.
Okay, good.
I think we need more agile. More agile CFOs. I had this discussion at a well-known customer of ours several times in digital transformation. I will move on. Okay, we will see that later. I will skip the customization, speed factory, this adaptation of running shoes, individual. It's a good case. Basically, you can read through this. We have to speed up. In the operations field, I think the automotive industry with this asset tracking, for example, is quite, the airline industry, airline manufacturing is very advanced. Yeah, I've seen also in Hannover Messe, very impressive from Bosch Rexroth, those tools basically that are connected to the internet that you even don't buy anymore. Yeah, you pay per use. So there are new business models around that. Very impressive, actually. Everything integrated in ERP, manufacturing execution systems, documentation of quality data, for example, for when you actually fasten screws there is, let's say, today already possible to fully automate that and get rid of paperwork. Yeah, and then here maybe one example where we both also have high stake because our activities under the label Untitled Inc. and also Advantum Partners are very much at the intersection of digital transformation, all those concepts like Industry 4.0, like VR, AR technologies, robotics, 3D printing, and blockchain technology, which is has a huge implementation, a huge potential impact. And before I outline this case, who has an idea of what blockchain is? Any? 1, 2, 3 heard of it? Yeah, a few. So the thing about it is you probably heard about Bitcoin. Yeah, who heard about Bitcoin? Yeah, quite a few. Yeah, so the idea behind Bitcoin was in 2009 to establish a digital currency that can be transferred via the internet, peer-to-peer, just that as I move physical money, yeah, from 10 10 Turkish lira from me to you. I don't need a middleman. Yeah, I don't need anybody. I give him the 10 lira and that's it. And when I do that today on the internet with a bank transfer, wire transfer, I need a bank and so in the middle. And in general, when you look at and below this system, there was a technology called blockchain, a distributed database, which is coined by the fact that we have a shared ledger of transactions. So every transaction is recorded, and every participant in this network owns a copy of this ledger. Yeah. So it's replicated, and it's cryptographically secured, so nobody can hack it. Yeah. And what is actually accepted as transactions is determined by a consensus of the participants. There's no central entity governing this. Yeah. This was this technology, the so-called blockchain distributed ledger, was a real innovation. And the innovation is basically that you can, for the first time, transfer an asset on the internet. Because what most of us do when they transfer a file or photo or whatever you can transfer via the internet, peer-to-peer. When I send anybody an email, I send a copy of a thing. I don't send the actual asset. And this was the problem this Bitcoin concept basically solved for the first time. Double spending problem, is it called? Yeah. But the technology below that has a huge potential for almost every other industry, this blockchain technology, because you can basically, through this, through the cutout of intermediaries here, that would align basically different databases. I visualized that through the form of these databases here. In this example, it's a aircraft manufacturers, aircraft suppliers, and regulators. Yeah, a highly regulated industry. Security is very important. Every transaction from parts manufacturing has to be documented. Yeah, you would have that in pharma as well. For example, you want to know the provenance of your raw material, your goods, to the end user, and you want to be able, if something happens, to instantly, more or less, identify where does this product, where was it manufactured, when was it manufactured, where did the raw material come from, etc., etc. And there's a huge, huge overhead and process in today's industries to do that, to ensure that. Yeah? And if you use this blockchain technology here, you can generate an audit trail which allows you to instantly determine in seconds, yeah, what happened there. And there are examples, for example, the food industry. I think it was, not so sure, also Walmart or so, where one C-level actually asked his staff to identify the provenance of a certain product. He just put it on the table. It took them 4 weeks or something like that to identify that. And with blockchain distributed ledger database, it took them seconds to see where it came from. And this is a huge advantage. The thing is that through its cryptographic approach here to seal those transactions, it's also immutable. It can't be changed without a consensus of a majority of participants here. Yeah. And there are also other options. For example, you can attach to those blockchains today so-called smart contracts. So you can execute, for example, payments in a supply chain, very important. If you look at complex products, for example, suppliers ship products to from the United States to Turkey, and then something is assembled, it's shipped to Germany or so. Then after the quality inspection, somebody signs off digitally, okay, it is okay, then automatically the payment is executed. These are things that can be built in such technology. So my bet, and our bet, is that this will actually revolutionize many, many industries in the coming 5 to 10 years. There are a lot of problems around this technology still unsolved. Yeah? For example, scalability, how many transactions you can execute is rather limited today. 5 to 15 transactions. There are solutions which are built differently, technology solutions which can scale like to a few 10,000s of transactions. But I'm pretty sure that we will see a revolution there. Yeah?
If you just think about a process, if you want to wire money from country A to country B, not inter-country, right? How long it takes and how much commission a bank takes. It takes 2-3 days, right? here. This goes in second. There is no bank in between. So you get it, let's say, almost for free. This is revolutionary in itself. Now think about any purchasing process where you have contracts with suppliers, right? How is it handled currently? You have a purchasing partner department, there's an Excel list, there's paperwork, send it over to the next guy in the company because all this stuff has to be signed, right? And then it goes to the department of the supplier, right? Where the same thing happens. So any purchasing process can easily take 3-4 weeks. I even saw on Frankfurt, we were on a blockchain conference, there was one guy from DHL who gave an example where such a settlement process on average takes 6 months because there are 10, 15 suppliers involved. With this technology, if it's really working, this goes into a second, right? And smart contracts automatically execute these things. So this can have a very dramatic impact. And it's one of these technologies which we personally think is on the same level as artificial intelligence or IoT. And the beautiful thing about it also, it can be easily combined with AI or IoT, because in AI and IoT you have a lot of security problems currently, right?
And exactly, yeah.
It can be hacked, right? This is a technology which is more or less has the highest security standards.
Also, when you think about 3D printing, for example, sending a 3D printing file to somewhere, there's a huge risk that it can be copied, it can be, and so on and so forth. Yeah, it's not easy. Okay, so.
What do you think about the Tangle technology?
I know Dominik Schiener and the team, the IOTA team. I'm actually, I believe in them. I also, but still, it's still in an experimental stage. I know that Bosch also works in some experiments with them. I have to admit that I also read the white paper, and even though I did like 20 years ago a lot of coding as well, and in the artificial intelligence field, I come to my limits to understand the exact mechanism of their consensus algorithm. Yeah, so, but I think it's very promising. I personally also am invested there.
What I know, IOTA has also has an office in Turkey for the investments. They already penetrated to our market. Yeah. So it is getting more and more important.
I mean, the IOTA Foundation.
Yeah, foundation is already
here. But the applications, basically, what you have to understand, I don't want to promise you or something that is not realistic. The thing about most blockchain or distributed ledger technologies, and IOTA Tangle is a different sort of, it's actually not a blockchain, but a similar concept, is that it's still experimental, it's still in a prototype stage, yeah? And I would advise all of you, let's say, to have to familiarize yourself with the concepts there and to get knowledgeable about it. I currently would not advise a company to go all in, let's say, and completely get rid of my existing IT now, yeah, and set up the whole thing blockchain-based for next year or so. Yeah, I think that's going to be a change over the next few years. It's hard to predict when exactly this will happen, but it could be a step change. It could be a real, because what you just described, when you, at the DHL example, when you can cut down the settlement process from 6 months to seconds and get rid of all the manual work in there, I mean, you can imagine what this means. The first logistics provider who would implement that at scale, and can handle thousands of transactions per second, yeah, globally, you wipe out the competition. Yeah.
But in terms of Internet of Things, where Bosch is involved, IOTA is a good solution. But you have to think about, this is not like the IP protocol, right? Where you have a kind of standard. There is Tangle, IOTA, there's Hashgraph, there are all these classical blockchains. where Ethereum is next to Bitcoin is the most convincing one. But also there is Neon, there is evolution in the blockchain field. It's very difficult to bet on one horse right now. But as Oliver said, you need to, I would say, open your ears and eyes toward this technology. Because there's so much money now pumped into it because of all these initial coin offerings. These startups will develop faster than the startups we have in the classical internet scene. But nothing which you can take to your company now. Say, I move my business processes to blockchain right now. But let's talk in 2 years, right? Let's talk in 2 years. That's the major message.
Yeah. Okay. So. This would certainly be, and then there are more the classic examples. You've seen probably all of those. Augmented reality in the warehouse, basically giving you additional information through these lenses and so on. I mean, that's not a big deal, I would say, today, that you will have this in, because I have to speed up as well. Actually, we don't have the break, but we just use the break. If you are interested, or do you want a break? You want a break? A short bio break, okay.
Let's have a short bio break and then we continue.
Yeah,
okay. We shorten the other one.
We shorten the other one. So let's have a bio break here and come back here. Yeah?
Yeah.